The raves in Brooklyn were like, they smelled like angel dust, and it was like hard techno all night. Sputnik 1 was in a skate park. And then there was a bowl. We filled the bowl with like 100 like beach balls. Like 600 people were coming to a place in Poughkeepsie on a Wednesday night in the summer of '88, right? We were the first store to have listening stations in New York and possibly anywhere. A, we were really young. B, there's no internet, right? So you're just doing what you do. You don't even know that it's special or not.
Hey there, it's me, Roxy Cottontail. You might know me as a DJ, artist, designer, and New York City party promoter, or from my bunny logo. I'm putting all that on the table and writing about the years that transformed music and the New York City scene. I've interviewed 250 friends and colleagues I admire. I ask all and reveal all. Please join me and the Tales to rediscover the 90s and the Y2K magical landscape of music, art, technology, and streetwear. This is Roxy's Tales.
I am Scott Richmond, originally from Poughkeepsie, New York. I bought my first synthesizer with my bar mitzvah money and the money I earned teaching Hebrew school when I was 13 years old. My first synthesizer was a Korg DW6000. And I bought my first 12-inch when I was 14. Crazy coincidence is Bill Coleman was the person who sold it to me. We were both from Poughkeepsie. We both DJ'd at the same club also. So he was like 16 or 17. I was 14. And I was buying new wave 12 inches from him from the South Hills Mall Record World.
My guest this week on Roxy's Tales is Scott Richmond, co-founder of Satellite Records and a true architect of 90s club culture. From New York City to eventually Boston and Atlanta, Satellite wasn't just a record store. It was an institution, a global meeting point for DJs, music lovers, and tastemakers who made pilgrimages to NYC just to dig those bins. Scott helped shape nightlife, dance music, and the energy of an era. And today, he's here to tell a story. Without further ado, Scott Richmond.
I was so into music, and back then, and probably still now, in Poughkeepsie, it was like the biggest IBM plant in the world. Were in Fishkill, Poughkeepsie, and Kingston at the time. So my school, it was all children of IBMers, and they didn't give two shits about music. And this is like pre-internet days, so it's like you just did what you did. You just driven. Yeah. And so I bought records and all that. And when I turned 18, I started going to the club that Bill Coleman had been a DJ at. So he's also from Poughkeepsie, DJed at this place called Birdie's. And he had left. And this is like 1987, 1988. And this guy just kept playing the same records every week. So I started bringing records to him. And I'm like, oh, here's the new order. Here's the new Depeche Mode. Here's the new this. Here's the new that. Like literally, they just played the same records every week. One day he goes, I quit, you take over. I literally learned how to DJ on a Yuri and two 1200s in a club. That is why, like, I am so not a person who will play for the wall. So I started DJing when I was 18, 19 years old. And literally in 1988, one of the greatest years of dance music, I played 6 hours a night on Wednesday night on the alternate night. I didn't even know, like, people were coming from like 60 miles around, but it was like so early that I didn't even know that I was like that well known. I mean, the place was packed. Like 600 people were coming to a place in Poughkeepsie on a Wednesday night in the summer of '88, right? I was playing like acid house and industrial, like Front 242, and and I would start the night at like 80 BPM, go all the way up to 200, back down again, and like that's kind of like foundationally like who I was as a DJ. So there was a thing called Rock Pool, you may have heard of. It was like the biggest record pool for alternative DJs. It was owned by the guys who did the New Music Seminar.
Okay.
So they had a record pool. So like play the record, or whatever it's called, the one that like the Def Mix people do, right? They had a record pool, and like this was the one for alternative people. So you get everything from like I said, like you'd get Depeche Mode, and you'd also get like FFR records when they were putting out like This Is Acid. So the funny part is Jonathan Kadish, my future business partner in Satellite, worked at Rock Pool. I would talk to him, whatever, and I mean, it was like a very foundational thing to like all the alternative and dance music. So then I ended up going to SUNY Purchase, And that's where I met John Selway. John Selway also went to SUNY Purchase. And yeah, so I would DJ in Poughkeepsie, and I was majoring in music composition. It was called Studio Comp. It's still, I was in the third year of that major. It still exists today, and it's like a dual major of studio engineering and music composition. So yeah, so that was like the seminal thing for me. So I went there. I wrote music for modern dance, and one of my tracks I remixed with John Selway. It's literally got licensed this year again.
Oh,
30
wow.
years. While I was in school, I was still DJing, still going down to Rockpool. And even while I was still in college, we started throwing raves. So the rave scene starts like 91, 90, 91. You know, it came out like kind of, I was really into the whole acid house thing, read about everything happening in England. You might know like the TV show Night Flight would show videos from England, all that stuff. And then that, you know, so it went from the acid house kind of strip, you know, house and acid house, but I was more into the acid house industrial, like the more European sound. And then it like it kind of turned into the whole like Manchester thing with like Stone Roses, all that stuff. That's like 91, 90, you know, and then 92 rave starts coming. So, you know, James Brown is dead, all that kind of stuff, you know, Apotheosis, all that. So I'm like playing this in like the club in Poughkeepsie, and I also DJ'd on Vassar College Radio. So you might know Neil Strauss, the guy who's like the pickup artist and did all the books and all that. So he went to Vassar at the same time that I was DJing at Birdie's, and so I met Neil Strauss, and so some of my like early experiences were like him bringing stuff from Chicago. So I saw that like the raves in Brooklyn were like they smelled like angel dust, and it was like hard techno all night, and that they were like dominating the scene. And NASA started around the same time, right? And I went to NASA.
It was 91, 92.
Yeah.
Thing.
And so I started going to NASA. NASA started June 1992. I specifically remember all these things. So the first raves I went to were X Cube. That was in 91. I can introduce you to the guy who did X Cube.
Where was X Cube?
In Long Island somewhere. I mean,
were you also going to the Storm Rave?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The Storm Rave was ranked and that one, it smelled like fucking angel dust.
Okay.
And it was like a bunch of like Brooklyn guys in wife beaters, and it was fucking scary. Also, when I was 18, I had a bad trip on mushrooms. I never did drugs again. So every part of my participation, I've been straight edge.
Wow.
So smelling like angel dust and all that, like I just love the music. I could give a fuck about drugs or anything. Like that's it. So also that was like, but I felt like this scene, and I was so young. I didn't know like how my brain worked. So I was like, all I knew was I love this music, and this music's going to go nowhere if it's going to be like this, because this is not like, so my life's mission has always been about spreading dance music. That's just who I've been, like in my bones since I was 13 years old. Right. So, and by the way, by 92, 93, WDST Woodstock hires me to do their Saturday night dance mix. After NASA ends, Jonathan and I open our own little club in New Paltz. Jonathan owns the lights. I own the sound system. We set it up every Friday night. Moby DJ'd there, Lenny D, all this. Then we record it. I put it on the radio the next night. So,
on that Vassar radio. Is this
on WDT Woodstock.
Woodstock's radio. Okay, cool.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like a major commercial. Like my show was so popular in Vassar that they hired me for WDST.
Wow.
And by the way, while I was still in college in 90, that's when Bill Coleman produced Delight, right? So I'm saying like that's our like little, it's so weird. These two DJs from Poughkeepsie from literally the same club, the same mall. I mean, I worked at Tape World, he worked at Record World. Like that's how weird it is. I mean, the two of us, like we're not like close friends or anything, but it's really just a weird, interesting thing. We threw Sputnik 1 August 22nd, 1992, and it had Jeff Mills and Scott Henry. Like the whole idea was, and then like what I brought to it was that it was never going to be one style of music. It was going to be everything under the sun. And there was going to be a vibe where we like kind of brought it up and back down again. So all of our parties were like, you would start at house, you'd like peak with like hardcore and techno and drum and bass, and then you bring it back down. And I would usually be the person who close out the parties because I was more like, I gravitate, of course, like I said, I came from acid house and industrial and all that. So I was the guy who played at 6 o'clock in the morning when the sun was rising and like that kind of house music. But anyway, so I get approached. They're opening a store in the basement of Liquid Sky. Aldo Hernandez, who ended up opening Throb later, was approached by Jeff Porter from Fierce Ruling Diva, and they were going to do a store called Subtopia. And so Jonathan and I were the investors. It was just the money we made off of Sputnik 2, right? So Sputnik 2 was in, and then the other thing about our raves, the raves were supposed to be in illegal venues, right? So, they did truck yards and warehouses and all that. And then my concept, again, this is like, I'm a 22-year-old kid, was always have it somewhere safe. So Sputnik 1 was in a skate park. And then there was a bowl. We filled the bowl with like 100 beach balls. Like it was always like we had like visual artists and stuff like that. A, we were really young. B, there's no internet, right? So you're just doing what you do. You don't even know that it's special or not, So Sputnik 2 was in a roller rink and Josh Wink was headlining, like all this. That was when the split between Satellite and being friendly with the Storm people, like they said we were sellouts, all this other stuff. But we took the money from that and we invested it in Subtopia. And the funny thing was, we said, we'll take and this is 1993, right? Or 92, whatever it was. Yeah, 92. We're like, we'll take the mail order. You can have the store. We'll do 75% mail order. You do 75% of the store. We said this is 9. And then not only that, we set up a computer system for house, press 1, for techno, press 2, you could see on the back of our flyers still.
Wow.
That there was a phone number where you could listen to the tracks before the internet.
The promoter's number would be on the flyer, and a similar thing with a pager or a voicemail to get on the guest list. But you're doing it to actually sell physical vinyl records, which is incredible.
All right, so this is the flyer for Sputnik 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can see and like Luke Slater's still pretty famous, but like Derek Carter, look, Tiga's all the way at the bottom.
What year is this?
94.
Wow.
But you could see we put on here, if you want to hear some of the tracks, to dial a phone number. So that's like all the phone numbers on the back.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
But look, this was during New Music Seminar. We did a festival before anyone did festivals.
Wow.
This is 3 days. Wednesday, Kenny Larkin, Global Communications, Frankie Bones, Wink, David Alvarado, Mike Grove. Then we did like the Astroworks room. We, DJ Spooky was part of that. Then on Friday we did, look at that, in 1994, Carl Cox headliner.
That's amazing.
Carl Cox, Lady D, John Aquaviva, blah, 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 blah. And then on Saturday, Juno Reactor, Dub Tribe, Mr. C, Mark Farina, Jimmy Crash, Derek Carter, Juan Atkins, Wink, Casper Pound, Guy DMC, Kioki.
Like, when did it start? When did it end?
It was like 10 to 6 in the morning.
Okay.
It was, so this was in the Manhattan Center, Hammerstein Ballroom. So this is Hammerstein Ballroom before it was Hammerstein Ballroom. They were still fixing some of it.
I'm from Maryland originally.
Yeah.
And so Fever and Buzz were happening when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And so were you also going to raves there too? Like, were you going up and down the East Coast, or were you just sticking to like New York?
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole scene was from Boston down to DC. No, look.
Yeah.
Scott Henry did the bus to this party. Look at the directions. It says from DC, New Jersey, take I-95 north to Garden State Parkway. Yeah.
I don't know if you know how I started. Justine D was my second roommate. So that was my introduction to nightlife by way of like new wave of rock and roll and punk. I went to see Basement Jacks at Twilo was like the first. I mean, I also went to Carbon too.
Oh, I booked that, right?
What?
I booked that.
Basement Jacks?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And that was for fucking Danny Teneglia's birthday.
Yes.
Yeah. See, why would I know that?
That night changed my fucking life. The buildup, I remember them like putting on like some instrument, like it
It
just
was Fly
repeat.
Life. That was Fly Life.
Was it?
Yeah. Do you know the song Baby?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the when they debuted Fly Life.
And I feel like they let it build up for like 20 minutes before they
Down,
even.
down, 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 down. Right. And they had their own versions. Yeah, they fucking murdered it.
Yeah. Okay, so you were telling me about the owner of Thump, was it Aldo?
Right. So all the people from Rockpool and Rockpool magazine leave and start this thing called Net Magazine. And I joined them. And one of those people was Jonathan. Wait till you see this shit. I knew I had it like, look at that.
Oh, this is like a rave magazine.
No, it wasn't.
It's not.
No, this was just like the rave, like the it was like
It
the
looks like
rave.
a flyer.
Right. But that just happened to see it had like +8, John Aquaviva's thing, Moonshine. But yeah, but we also were the first people. This Net magazine was the first magazine to write about Beck. So we had this girl, Robin Ice Girl. She was like the alternative person, and she was the editor. And then we were like the dance music guys.
Okay.
So no, I just have this one because obviously like it was the dance music version, right? And this was, you see Dub Try. I mean, like we covered all these people. And I did a record pool for college radio. And I had 50 radio stations. I distributed like Dub Tribe and all that. Like Matt Adele was the guy putting out the first Dub Tribe records and all that. So he had a label called Organico. And so I've known Matt Adele since like whatever this is, 92, whatever. Like everyone talks about NASA and Storm, and Satellite probably did more to change things than anybody else. But it was like we didn't have PR people. Like we were the behind the scenes. Like we owned the magazine. We weren't getting people to write it. Like we didn't write about ourselves. Like I've never done that. So anyway, so we did that. So Aldo comes to the office for that magazine because Aldo was one of the people getting records, and I think he might have even written reviews in there too. So he comes to us, he's like, there's this store, it's going to open in the basement of Liquid Sky. Do you want to be the investors? And it was right after Sputnik 2. We're like, sure. And so we said, we'll take the mailer or whatever. So Aldo, like a few months later, Aldo calls us and he's like, you guys need to come down here. We're like, okay, sounds serious. And he opens the register and there's these little yellow pieces of paper that says E25. So Jeff Porter, Fierce Ruling Diva, is paying for drugs out of the register and putting the receipts in the register.
Oh my God.
The thing is, like, I don't even know exactly what's wrong with that. You know what I mean? It's just wrong. But it's not like he was at
least he was recording it.
Right?
Petty cash.
We go to confront him. We never saw him again. He went back to Amsterdam. We end up with the store. I mean, it's not like we weren't qualified. We knew, we were doing like all sorts of stuff, but he leaves and we take over the store. But we're, Soul Singer. So we're in the basement of his store now and we change it to Satellite. And then we end up being like the rave store, right? For dance music. So that's October 93. But we always had every genre under one roof. We were the first store to have listening stations in New York and possibly anywhere. And that was bringing that European idea in. Yeah. And that idea came from Jeff Porter because he brought that idea from Amsterdam. But from what I understand, Europe was even worse. So I don't remember exactly how we came up with it, but we started with 4 listening stations. And then we got it up to 8. We always had a woman working. We were the first record store to always have a woman working. Because the point was like, so just spinning back to the 1988, 89, 90, 91, where I was getting stuff from Rockpool, I would shop at Vinyl Mania, Decadence, all those, that whole little circuit.
Yeah.
And to get your records heard, the guy behind the counter had to play your records for you. So first of all, they treated women like shit. Every time women went up to the counter, they'd roll their eyes, stuff like that. No doubt. All those stores. And number 2, I remember going to Vinyl Mania. They ended up opening up an alternative store, but it would be like, especially Dance Tracks was exceptionally bad at this, that I would be like, they'd be playing like whatever New York thing. And I'd be like, hey, I want to hear that thing from like that. It would actually was like RNS I'd ask to hear a record from RNS and they would like roll their eyes and make faces and stuff like that. Well, it was before all the New York people adopted that music, right? And Satellite was a massive influence on that. I don't know how much you remember of it, but we had the genres would go from like deep.
Yeah, it was like from drum and bass, house, disco house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
all-
exactly.
yeah.
And that, right. And then Jonathan's brother heard about the internet, and his brother is the one who started our website. And then Jonathan learned this program called Fox Pro. And so with Fox Pro, we started putting all the records into the database. And that's literally how we kind of helped revolutionize the music industry, or at least the dance music industry. We were the first people to put a genre on a record. Remember how it would say house, comma, breaks, house, comma, deep?
Mhm.
That was us. So we invented that. Like I take, not that anyone gives a fuck,
Yeah.
but like we were
I
the
give
ones,
a fuck.
the whole genreification of everything. And so, but that was, so Jonathan and his brother were like programming the website. And then I was one like we'd have reams of like printing out what sold. I would like reorder everything one by one. And it was really funny to watch like New York, like, you know, they would try to label us as the rave store. But basically ground zero for us was that Hector Romero was shopping in our store. And this is, I knew Hector because the track that I put out got put out through David Chang when Emotive Records. David Chang's two employees were Ted Patterson and Hector Romero. And then those two guys were like Satellite's first original clients.
What year did you guys start like uploading music and you're like all of that online?
1995 or 96.
Yeah.
Look at this. We had curators and all that. This is when I tried to do digital download. We're so far out of our time. Like, it sucks.
No, it's amazing.
The ironic thing is that our website had all the sound samples, and other record stores would go to our website
Oh, see what to buy.
Yeah, to buy from Watts and the rest of the companies, because they couldn't hear the music, right?
Were you also, like you said, Danny Tenaglia was a regular shopper?
Yeah, so his like Grease CD, half the records on it I picked for him.
Wow.
I remember like, so we're the ones who got it. Like, so the whole New York scene getting into techno, the funny thing was, like, of course, Sonic Groove and Frankie Bones, they were all known for techno, but we're the ones who sold techno to house people. Let me tell you the story of Atlanta. So that, because that's how, you know, Tommy lived in Atlanta. So I go to this store, Wish. It's like huge. It's the greatest rave store I've ever seen in my life. And I go in the basement, and the basement is like this, like they're like sale bins, like just boxes with clothes in it. And I go, I'm like, who's the owner? I walk up to him, I'm like, would you like to have a record store here? And that's literally how I started. I didn't know he had promised it to somebody else or something, but, and then Tommy Sunshine was like, lived like down the block or something. I met him like through some of the parties there. But this is why I want to tell the story, because what he would do is he would drop like Led Zeppelin and all these different like rock things in the middle of dance music. Tommy had this vision of like being this like rock and roll dance person.
Mm-hmm.
So it really was that. And I told him, I would always tell people that since 96, motherfucker was trying to put rock music with dance music. So when the Electro Clash, it was Electro Clash first, then Electro House, right? And then eventually turned into EDM, right? Definitely. So, but, you know, when it came, he was like, that was like his calling. But then for John Selway, he's always been doing crazy, esoteric, weird shit. So his stuff was more on like the electro side. And so Hell, you know, who's like a musical genius, like knew that like John and like that whole like crazy esoteric shit, like Hell put that stuff out too. And of course, Satellite was always on top of everything first. So we had all the first Gigolo records, you know, we knew the emerging styles, all that kind of stuff. You know, it was bubbling under. And then I would say like 2001, 2002, 2003 were like the first dubstep records, and they sounded terrible, but what I cared about was just, and of course it was like speed garage, and like speed garage had that influence as well. And so you're like looking at these like emerging styles, and like, how like strong garage got and all that. And so yeah, so basically just fast forwarding to when we met. So then 2005, I end up helping run Soul with Tom Mello. And so we had Axwell there, and like, again, like all that those emerging DJs, and that sound was starting to emerge. This is before Axwell like was like sold out, right? So Axwell was like, and I just remember all of that kind of like baseline bass stuff. In a way, this stuff also became like bass music, right?
What years was that?
2004 to 2007 or something.
Okay.
And so this is how I was making money then, and I was still trying to like hustle satellite, but this is my transition out, was like running these clubs for a while. And then 2008, I started the download with the curated stuff. I had a section called Playlist Plus that was like based on like, here's the playlist they play at Pasha, here's this before Spotify, and we had a section called Sounds Like before Pandora. So I mean, I've always had a vision for like digital and music, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying. So whether it was like a phone system or whatever, it's like, it's always been about that. 2006, 2007, we end up at Rebel. You're there. That's when were you the one that did the after party for Bjork, or was that?
No, we did an after party that Diplo played somewhere. Diplo played somewhere, and we had him after.
But anyway, so Rebel was like, the neon thing was coming in. I remember you and your friend, what's her name?
Katie Longmire.
And I knew, I'm like, these girls are fucking on it.
But yeah, it was like Scotty B, Dave Nada. I forget. We even had a side room with like reggae and hip hop. I think we did like a couple rooms that night, I believe.
Well, yeah, because also Tom's whole thing, like, he had all, Stretch Armstrong
and Mark Ronson
all the time. Yeah, now Mark Ronson's like a fucking billionaire, right?
Barbie, he just scored Barbie.
Yeah, back then. And the other interesting thing about satellite, which was also like kind of made things precarious, is we were the first people to just order directly from Europe. So basically there was this company called Nemesis, and she tried to like keep everybody from being able to order direct. And so there was Nemesis and Watts, and then there was Syntax. And a lot of the people that of, like, they all worked at those different like record distributors, right? So I started ordering records directly from Europe. I mean, I used to order from Pedro. So Pedro and I would talk every week. Anytime they had new stuff from, Roulet or Creedmoor, I ordered directly from Pedro. Now he's so famous, right? And so like it was like Noitone and like all these different record distributors. I used to love dealing with them because they were so like
in it.
Like, yeah, like, and it wasn't Berlin yet. They were all in like Frankfurt. Gigolo was distributed by one of those guys, also like Compact Records. Compact's been around forever. So they were like just such pure techno, right? And I loved that. Like, I loved immersing myself in anything like that.
So wait, tell me about the whole dubstep scene too, because when we talked briefly before, you were telling me about prior to AM Only and their involvement in that too, right?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, really early dubstep was just kind of, I mean, the idea was it was just drum and bass at 70 BPM instead of, you know what I mean? Like, or 90 or 80 or 90 BPM. And like, it's just really interesting, even for me, like, even like synthwave. I mean, like, synthwave has been around for 10 years, but the early synthwave to me didn't sound great. Like it was like missing something. Now it's like amazing. I think it's the same thing for dubstep. Like early dubstep, we'd get like these white labels. They were like very poorly produced. And really the concept was there of like kind of taking the drum and bass ethos and then kind of having these like bass lines, like using the drum and bass lines, but having the beats be, the like more the hip hop-ish kind of beats, right? And so I'm just saying, I remember it emerging as a genre, us calling it dubstep. And it wasn't necessarily commercialized until a few years later. Now, the funny thing is they're saying that Electroclash was gone by like 2005, but that's not true.
No, it's still in pop music today.
But I'm saying, like, to me, it was this like underground thing, like with Misfit and all that stuff. But then when I think of you, what year was that? That was 2005. Like the whole like neon and like the rave thing started happening. And to me, that's when it went from like Electroclash to like Electro House. And like that's like kind of to me the early days of EDM. And I feel like you guys were like really on that. We weren't, and of course, EDM wasn't a dirty word yet either, right?
No.
So like Felix was a huge part of that scene, right?
Yes.
And then he was like the headliner for like one of the parties we did at Rebel, right? I remember like, it was a big deal. But the funny thing was, like, that's what I'm saying. Like you had like Hell and Kitten and all these people from Germany, and they came from this esoteric techno sound. And then you had, Felix and like his crew, and they were Chicago, and they came from the Wild Pitch sound.
This is why I want to talk to you, because I know that you have a huge history here and a big value to what became in electronic dance music in New York. Do you think we covered a lot?
I have no idea what I just told you.
Yeah.
All work.
We covered a lot. It's really good.
Thanks for hopping by. That's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment, and stalk. Bounce, little kitty.